Here's a question that might surprise you, so think for a second before you answer it. Did the Apostle Paul actually convert? Now, I know some of you are thinking, that sounds ridiculous. Of course he converted. What are you talking about? We all know the story of his dramatic conversion experience on the Damascus Road. That's the ultimate conversion story, right? Well, what if I told you that Paul himself never claimed to leave Judaism? What if the whole idea of conversion is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of early Christianity itself? Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, I'm Colin, the resident nerd and Bible scholar here at the Bible Uncut and Unfiltered. We love Paul's conversion story, right? It has been the subject of so many different church sermons over the years. Saul the persecutor becomes Paul the apostle. Jewish legalist becomes Christian missionary. It's dramatic, it's transformative. It fits perfectly into our modern explanation of what it means to become a Christian. But here's the problem. Paul never described his experience as leaving one religion for another. In fact, if you read his letters in the New Testament that we have carefully, he consistently identifies himself as Jewish throughout his ministry as a Christian. Let's look at the evidence here. In Romans 11, Paul asks, did God reject his people? By no means. I am an Israelite myself, a descendant of Abraham from the tribe of Benjamin. And then he goes on to talk more about that. Present tense, I am an Israelite. And part of that was because you couldn't exactly separate your national identity from your religious identity at that time. But that just kind of goes along with what I'm saying here. Like, he didn't become some other religion. He was still describing himself in terms of being Jewish. And that didn't just mean ethnicity. It also meant it was tied to the belief system. In Philippians 3, he describes himself as circumcised on the 8th day of the people of Israel of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, in regards to the law, a Pharisee. Again, he's not talking about his past. He is describing his identity. Throughout Acts, we see Paul continuing Jewish practices. He takes a Nazirite vow. He observes Jewish festivals. He goes to synagogues in every city, and he argues from Jewish scriptures. When he's arrested, he doesn't say, oh, I'm no longer Jewish. He says that he's being persecuted for believing in the resurrection, a perfectly Jewish concept that was debated amongst the sects of his day. This is a central point of biblical scholarship for the last about 100 years that's only now starting to trickle down to churches. And I really wish it would move a little bit faster because this is so important to understand. Christianity was not separate from Judaism at the start. I realize where we're at today, Christianity and Judaism are two very different things. But it started as a Jewish movement, as a sect within Judaism. And just think about it with me. Jesus was Jewish. The 12 disciples were Jewish. Most of the New Testament writers were Jewish. They didn't see themselves as starting some new religion. They saw Jesus as the fulfillment of their Jewish scriptures, their Jewish hopes, their Jewish identity. All of it was tied to Judaism. Paul never converted from Judaism into Christianity because they weren't separate at that time. He remained a Jew who came to believe that Jesus was the Messiah that his people had been waiting for. For Paul, Jesus wasn't about abandoning his faith and going to a different one. It was about seeing the faith that he already had being fulfilled. Understanding it this way changes everything, I think, about how we read his parts of the New Testament. When Paul is critiquing works of the law and similar things, he is not rejecting Judaism wholesale. He is not villainizing it the way that so many Christians have for the last 2,000 years. Rather, he is participating in internal Jewish debates about how Gentiles could be included in God's covenant people. Now, this perspective shift should do three things for us. First, it should give us much more respect for the Jewish faith. Christianity didn't replace Judaism. It grew out of it. Second, it should remind us that the New Testament has a cultural context that is very different from our own. These were not modern Western Christians writing to modern Western Christians. And third, this is huge, it should reframe how we view passages that seem to say Christianity replaces Judaism as the true religion. Paul wasn't arguing that all of Judaism was wrong. Rather, he was arguing that God was expanding his covenant with the Jews to include all nations, which he would say was the point from the start. It's just that it has happened now instead of in the future. That was the difference for him. Not that Judaism is now suddenly bad and Christianity is suddenly good, but rather that this particular way of going about it is the most faithful way to interpret our shared Jewish faith from Paul's perspective. So here's what Paul's experience should teach us. It's not about your religious label. It's not switching from one team to another. It's about recognizing God's work in the world and aligning your life with that, wherever you may find it. Paul didn't stop being Jewish when he encountered Jesus on that Damascus road. He became a Jewish follower of a Jewish Messiah who was sent to bring God's salvation to both Jews and Gentiles. His identity didn't switch, it expanded. Likewise, we need to expand our often narrow understanding of what it means to come to Christ or follow Jesus or convert to Christianity. So maybe instead of talking about Paul's conversion, we should talk about his calling or his commissioning, which, by the way, is how he describes it in Galatians. Sometimes the most transformative experiences aren't about becoming someone completely different, they're about becoming who you were always meant to be.